A woman, repeatedly humiliated at a wealthy family Thanksgiving, has her life upended when the family chef reveals she is not a cousin but their daughter and Lucas's sister. Humiliation, her drink poured out, triggers an emotional outburst where she claims her place at the table. The chef corroborates with documents and a photograph. The revelation fractures the family, forces confessions and apologies, and begins a slow, uncertain path toward reclamation and agency as she leaves the mansion to reclaim her life. Beginning, protagonist enters luxurious family Thanksgiving, feeling like an outsider. Small humiliations accumulate: worn clothes, juice box, being mocked. Conflict: Lucas publicly humiliates her by pouring her drink. The protagonist retreats emotionally but is handed a microphone by the chef. She speaks up about being treated as lesser. Climax: the chef reveals that she is not a cousin but their daughter, produces a birth certificate and photo. Shock, confrontations, Lucas's anger, and the protagonist's assertion of belonging culminate. End: after the reveal, she reclaims dignity, sings, serves her pie, leaves the house into the snow with new resolve. Subsequent scenes show letters, fragile reconciliations, a chef who supports her, and the beginning of her writing her own story. The micro-humiliation of the drink being poured down the sink: visceral, visual, instantly sympathetic. The chef handing the mic, a small prop that becomes a catalyst for truth. The sudden reveal of the birth certificate/photograph, dramatic reversal and family-shattering reveal. Singing the lullaby and the pie moment, reclaiming identity through voice and craft. The closing image of the protagonist walking into falling snow, carrying the photo, a quiet, cathartic resolution. Family betrayal and secret keeping are universally resonant. The underdog protagonist wins dignity, shareable emotional payoff. Sharp, visual moments: drink poured, mic handed, birth certificate, make for short-form dramatization and thumbnail-ready imagery. Themes of identity, belonging, and public humiliation translate well to TikTok/YouTube Reels and comment-driven engagement. People will pick sides. The blend of confrontation, emotional reveal, and small victories, pie, song, creates a satisfying arc for short-format storytelling. Some plot beats are familiar. Secret child reveal is a melodrama staple. The chef acts as a convenient deus ex machina. He knows everything and times the revelation perfectly without deep motive exploration. The family's reaction sometimes feels one-note, immediate guilt/shock, rather than complex. Lucas's arc resolves quickly. Repetition of humiliation imagery, drink, pie pushed aside, could be condensed or shown more subtly. Several emotional beats are told rather than shown, long internal monologue, which can flatten cinematic impact in a short film. Deepen motivations, give the chef clearer stakes: why risk his job? A past connection, moral debt. Make the parents' choices emotionally complicated: fear, poverty, social pressure, not just we made a mistake. Show, don't tell, replace some internal narration with visual motifs, e.g., worn shoe, stained napkin, the way light avoids her, to keep it cinematic. Tighten pacing, remove or compress repetitive humiliation scenes, make the mic hand and reveal feel inevitable, not random. Humanize Lucas, give him a small scene of private vulnerability that explains his cruelty, jealousy, fear of scandal, so his later regret has weight. Raise stakes in climax. Instead of only a birth certificate, add an object or memory that ties protagonist to the family: a lullaby, an old scar, a shared keepsake, making the reveal emotionally anchored. Aftermath complexity. Show consequences beyond apologies: legal, relational, or personal choices. Does she want to pursue relationship? Demand answers, keeping the ending open but powerful. They always set the table to make you feel small. Not by accident, but with a kind of practiced geometry: long linen cloths, chairs aligned like trophies, candles lit at angles that caught only the polished faces and left everyone else in shadow. The foyer smelled like pine and expensive perfume. The hallway echoed with laughter that had nowhere for my voice to land. I stand in the doorway with my coat half on, the apple pie box held like contraband. My shoes know the game, scuffed at the toes, a little too practical for rooms built to be photographed. I slide past the host cluster, glassware chiming, and the smiles that greet me are as thin as the paper napkins they tuck into cuffs. Lucas notices me before anyone else does. He notices everything. He notices me like you notice a fly at a window, dismissive, slight, certain of its insignificance. Late, he says, as if time were part of the insult. He tilts his head the way a man sizes up a joke. Around him the room fills with the soft luxury of belonging. I step into the kitchen with my box. The chef, broad-shouldered, hands that have coaxed goodness out of ingredients for longer than anyone bothers to remember, takes the apple pie, eyes polite but distant, and sets it on a corner of the counter. He doesn't offer a knife. The pie is pushed to the edge of things where crumbs can be forgotten. Dinner begins under a chandelier like an accusation. People talk around me, not to me. Name drops in currency and runway destinations fill the air while my words drift without purchase. I sip boxed juice with the careful deliberation of someone who has practiced invisibility. When I laugh, they laugh at the surface. When I speak, someone else will always be louder, fresher, funnier. The pivot is small, a clink, a toast, a hand that claims my cup. Lucas takes it with a grin the size of a verdict. He walks as decisive, theatrical, to the sink and pours my drink down the drain. For a second, the world turns into slow film. The juice streams into porcelain and the sound is loud enough to become private. The room erupts in that unforgiving laughter, and my cheeks warm with a heat that feels like exposure. I want to move away, to fold like paper and disappear into the back stairwell where coats gather and conversations thin. Instead, I stand. I taste shame in the hollows of my mouth, like pennies left in a pocket. I press my knuckles to the box of pie, feel the uneven crust beneath cardboard, a small, honest thing I've made, and for the first time that night, the kitchen door opens in a new way. The chef steps forward, not with a reprimand but with something heavier, a tiny, deliberate hand offering a microphone, simple, black, like the handle of a decision. He doesn't grin. He doesn't perform. He meets my eyes and says one syllable like a pivot in a script, now. Around us the room continues the ritual, forks, laughter, air, but time begins to bend. The microphone is absurd and ordinary all in one, its cord hums faintly, a thin cord connecting me to the room in a way no elbows or polite comments ever have. People glance, then still. Lucas smirks, expecting a show, a karaoke joke, the easy humiliation that's been rehearsed for years. I step into the rounded pool of light the chandelier allows, the space where faces finally turn. My pulse is an animal in a cage. I do not know the speech I will give, I only know the shape of what I cannot hold back anymore. This night has tucked years of small erasures into one focused moment. The mic is warm in my hand. The room waits like a held breath. And in that hush, between the clatter and the gold glass opulence, I choose to speak. My voice starts like a cracked record, tentative, unsure, because the right to claim space is a practice I haven't been taught. At first it's just sentences landing awkwardly, I'm always happy to be here, I say, and someone's shoe taps the floor to cover the rhythm of my words. I can feel the choreography of dismissal all around me. A fork slides, a phone glows, a smile sharpens and is held like a blade. But something shifts. The more I name the small things, how I learned to be quiet to survive Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving, how the juice in a plastic cup felt like a declaration, my throat loosens. The shame that usually sits like a stone in my chest begins to dissolve into language. I speak about the pie in my hands, about the orchard mornings when I learned to roll crust by hand, about the tiny victories that no one applauded. I speak for the child who learned to make herself small so others could feel bigger. Faces change. Some soften as if memory is an old photograph being developed in front of their eyes. Others harden, as if anger is the more comfortable heat. Lucas laughs once, thin and quick, trying to fold the moment back into a joke. I ignore him. I keep talking, because for the first time words do something other than cling to the interior of me, they land. That's when the chef closes his eyes and clears his throat like he's crossing a line he's been circling for years. He steps to the center with a practiced calm, and when he speaks it is not to alarm but to set things right. His voice is low, steady, an instrument in a room that's been tuned to superiority. "She's not your cousin," he says. The syllables fall like stones into a pond. "She's your daughter." Air leaves like a valve releasing. The chandelier seems to dim. My pulse is a drumbeat. The room is suddenly full of older echoes, footsteps that led away, whispered decisions made in panic, signatures on papers that rearranged lives. The chef's hand comes away from his coat pocket with a folded paper, an artifact of a life that is a stranger to me and all at once mine, a birth certificate. He lays it down like a verdict, and the names on it split the world in two. I walk forward because I have to see, to steady myself against the impossible. The letters are small and authoritative. There is my name. There are their names. For a moment, I live in the incomprehension between two truths, everything people have said to me and nothing they have told me. 1,000 small humiliations, half-baked dinners, sideways glances, collapse into a single sharp fact that realigns every axis of my history. The people who raised Lucas look like the weather, clouds of guilt and fear passing over faces that are suddenly very old. They don't rise immediately to explain, guilt is a poor spokesperson. The woman I called aunt, her hands tremble as she reaches for the back of a chair. "We thought it was best," she says finally, voice small, like someone admitting to a crime they committed out of panic, not malice. "We were young. We were scared." Lucas stands like a man who's been in a play and now discovers the script is wrong. He paces words in anger, both ill-fitting garments. "This is insane," he snaps, but his jaw trembles. Denial is a reflex, cruelty had once been his armor. For years he wore my misrecognition like a proof of his superiority, now the proof turns back on him. Children at the table, who'd been watching like minor constellations, begin to look at me differently. One of the little girls leans forward, eyes wide, unburdened by the politics of secrets. "Are you really family?" she whispers. Her question is honest, it is a key. And as I look at her, I see another possibility, a way to be claimed not by apology but by presence. The chef watches, steady as a lighthouse. He had been small in this room for a long time, behind stoves and behind secrets, until tonight. When he meets my gaze, there is something like relief. He had kept a truth for years, keeping it cost him his peace. Now that it's out, the room feels precarious, like a house after an earthquake. Foundations have shifted. No one knows how to be in the new light. I run my thumb along the edge of the birth certificate as if I could smooth the wrinkle in time. My life, constructed in waiting room halves and foster home halves, has been handed back to me in one breathless, astonishing moment. The sound around me is not only shock, it is the slow, beginning rearrangement of roles. I am no longer a guest. The table is no longer only theirs. Revelation is a blunt instrument. It smashes expectations into shards that reflect different truths to everyone. For some, it is guilt. For others, a rationale to harden. For me, it is a pivot point where the small, patient grief that had been my atmosphere thins and becomes something else, possibility braided with rage. Lucas's face is an argument in real time. His knuckles are white around the wine glass he didn't finish. In the doorway his shoulders stiffen like a man catching himself mid-performance. "This is manipulation," he says, though the voice lacks conviction. He throws accusations at the chef, blaming the messenger for the message, but the paper between my hands is quieter than any defense. Then he does something that fractures the moment further, he storms out. Not with a dramatic flourish, not with promises, just a heavy, petulant retreat. The house inhales. People look to one another for cues on deportment. Are we scandalized? Embarrassed? Forgiving? The script for family politeness is suddenly ripped, and a new ledger begins. Who will ask the hard questions, and who will sweep the shrapnel under rugs? I should feel triumphant. Instead, I feel raw. The naming of kinship does not stitch warmth onto cold years. It opens wounds. Questions that have been dormant begin to rage awake. Why was I hidden? What measures of shame or poverty or fear convinced them to hand me away? Why did they choose position over truth? The chef crosses to me and offers a faded photograph, corners worn, the film slightly yellowed. It's a small domestic image, two young parents, hair not yet silvered by compromise, holding a squalling infant who curls in one of their arms. Recognition is a needle. I see my own cheek in the baby's turned face. The photograph is a relic that collides with the legal proof on the table, and together they create an impossible map connecting my past to their present. My mother, if mother is the right word now, collapses into a chair like the air has been vacated from her lungs. Her fingers find the back of the chair, nails pressing hard enough to leave marks. We thought we were protecting you, she says, each word a small, imperfect apology. She offers motives, fear, youth, pressure, and they land like explanations but not redemption. The confession raises more questions than it answers, yet opens an odd, aching space where regret and longing are thinly braided. People begin to look at me not as the perennial outsider but as the lodestone of a story they've kept muffled for decades. I am at once guilty and innocent in their minds, guilty of walking into their curated lives unannounced, innocent of the reasons they have. This duality is dizzying. The shift is not all internal. Practicalities begin to ripple outward. Old letters are produced, unsent envelopes that the chef has kept. Each page is a litany of regret, the kind that writes itself when shame is too severe to risk postage. They are intimate, clumsy, tender. They speak of longing, confusion, a promise to explain, and the cowardice that forestalled it. Reading them, I feel small hands of the past reaching for me across a gulf of years, pleading for a bridge I had to build for myself. Then the midpoint twist fractures into something tender. Not everyone in that luminous room is irredeemable. A little cousin, pigtails, curious eyes, shuffles forward and tugs my sleeve. You sing like Nana, she says, as if the family songs are a map everyone inherited except me. Her innocence is a tiny, powerful witness. I teach the girl a line from the lullaby my foster mother hummed, a short phrase. She repeats it, unguarded. The melody is a reclamation. It bypasses adult defenses and lands in something honest and uncomplicated. That line of the song becomes an axis. The adults clear their throats and avert eyes. The children listen, and with each phrase they teach, the room's pretense splinters further. The truth has a gravity that pulls at what's left of their composed faces. And while they shuffle to compose new roles, I feel a stabilization inside of myself that is not dependent on their acceptance. The twist is not only the revelation but the fact that revelation is not the end, it is the threshold into the complicated business of reassembling lives. Outside, snow begins to fall. There is soft, bright sequins that make the mansion look like a painted memory. Inside, under the chandelier, the work shifts from accusation to consequence. The chef's intervention has detonated old defenses, it has also created an opening that something new might grow through. I hold the photograph to my chest and realize that the story now has a second act, one where I choose whether to step into the life the documents claim or to draw a different map of family and belonging. The days after the revelation become a rhythm of small tremors. Calls and silences alternate with envelopes of explanation. The house, once a fortress of curated lives, becomes an awkward theater where apologies are attempted and fractured. The neighbors murmur. The family-friend group realigns like cards reshuffled too abruptly. I watch from the edges as conversations begin to orbit me with a gravity they never had before. I am pulled into the vortex of memories and questions. The woman who raised Lucas is my mother, though she seems to discover the word like someone testing a new taste, offers accounts that wobble between confession and defense. We were terrified, she says repeatedly, as if some repetition might render the fear understandable. The father, silent for so long, tries to speak and finds the vocabulary of culpability foreign to his tongue. We thought it was best, he insists, words brittle as old bread. Lucas remains the most volatile variable. The humiliation he engineered earlier then cemented him in a role he doesn't want to relinquish lightly. He is alternately shamefaced and furious, grappling with a new identity as brother while mourning the pedestal his superiority had built. There are moments when he looks at me like a man who'd been given someone else's script and is trying to improvise. He wants control back, and I am the most immediate place to transfer the unease. I am surprised at the intensity of my own response. This is not merely about the familial title now. It is about every small erasure that accumulated into a life of self-negotiation. The pie I baked, the imperfect crust, has become symbol and anchor. People ask to see the letters the chef gave me. They leaf through apologies that smell faintly of regret. The letters are a betrayal catalogued in ink, promises to right, attempts at atonement, the cowardice of silence. Each line is a needle. One evening, as snow piles against the mullioned windows, my mother asks if we can sit together. The kitchen has become the neutral ground of this new geography, plain light, quiet, the smell of coffee grounding the air. Her hands tremble around a mug. She tells the story I had guessed, the pregnancy at 17, the panic, the pressure of family expectations, the decision made out of fear that someone else could offer me a more stable life. She tells it in fragments, as if piecing it together as she goes along. She cries in small, jagged breaths. Her voice is not an excuse, it is an offering, raw and imperfect. But her sorrow does not undo years of absence. Forgiveness is not a transaction performed live, it is laborious and iterative. I listen because I want answers, and the answers make a different kind of ache. They do not flatter me with the easy sweetness of reconciliation. They pull my life into sharper focus and reveal how much work will be required if any healing is to begin. The pressure rises publicly, too. The woman I once called Aunt is interviewed briefly by a family friend who wants the version that will minimize scandal. People offer platitudes about doing what they thought was best. The friend group fractures into those who rally to family image and those who tilt toward truth. A cousin posts a carefully worded message online, and I feel that mine is now a story with an audience beyond the dining room. As the public and private gears grind together, I feel the pull of a decision. This is the moment that asks, will I accept the narrative they hand me, an inheritance of shame patched with apologies, or will I insist on defining the terms? The chef's presence remains a quiet reassurance. He brings small rituals of care, a lasagna, a slow-brewed pot of coffee, envelopes of letters he'd kept safe in his pantry. He offers no solutions, only evidence and steady compassion. Lucas attempts one last confrontation, a raised voice, a demand for proof beyond the paper, an assertion that blood does not make family, that the title can be taken back with a slap of social force. It is a brittle argument, and it lands like a man trying to hold onto a crown made of thin metal. He asks me, in the same tone he used years ago, what I want. The question is simple but seismic. What I want is not vengeance or restitution in initials, I want dignity. I want them to learn that humiliation is not their private entertainment. I want to be seen not as a problem to be solved, but as a person with a life. I want answers and a future that I can draft myself. I want to choose whether this family will be a part of it. That evening, the house bristles with pressure. The chandelier light seems too bright, revealing the fissures. I look at the photograph the chef gave me and feel the weight of its paper like a compass. The climax, I realize, will not be only in the revelation of blood. It must be in the way I claim authorship of my own story, how I use truth not to annihilate others but to redefine myself. The room that night is a tight thing. Everyone is close enough to hear the intake of someone's breath. The house hums with the mechanical quiet of half-turned lives. I've rehearsed nothing, every word I speak has already been lived. The microphone, once a ridiculous, clinical object, feels like a blade and a lifeline both. I pick it up again because the room has waited long enough. I do not begin with accusation. I begin with truth, and truth is not accusation, it is an unadorned light. I speak about the smallness that was foisted on me, the mismatched shoes, the jokes at my expense, the nights of cold spaghetti. I let the details land. The more specific the detail, the less easy it is to ignore. People shift. Faces that had once been placid masks begin to show cracks. A sip of wine is forgotten in a glass. Then I say the things the birth certificate and letters cannot fully convey. I speak of the years I spent waiting for the telephone to ring and the way birthdays became anniversaries of absence. I speak of the tenderness I learned from foster mothers who hummed lullabies that were not mine but taught me voice. I say, plainly, you gave me life and then made me a secret. You taught me to stay quiet. I will not learn that lesson any longer. Lucas rises. He wants the stage, wants to reclaim the narrative as if it were a trophy he can hold up and polish. He mocks, he deflects. I watch him and find my voice steady. I name the small cruelties that were entertainment to him. I name the hurt he wore like proof of superiority. I do not ask him to grovel, I do not invite an immediate absolution. Instead, I ask for acknowledgement. A single sentence of recognition of harm will do more to start a bridge than months of contrived apologies. The chef interrupts the brittle theatrics at this point. He steps forward, calmer than I feel, and lays out the legal truth, the certificate, the stamped ink, the photograph. He tells the room about the letters, about nights he kept them in a drawer because he believed it was not his place to reveal. He tells them, with a quiet fury, that truth becomes a cruelty when hidden deliberately. The room listens, and the air tightens until it whistles. My mother's hands find mine, an unexpected contact, electric and terrible. Her eyes ask for a mercy she cannot properly offer. Her voice cracks through the hush as she tells me why, in stuttering, human terms, fear, immaturity, pressure. Each word is an attempt to cross a chasm with a rope frayed by time. I do not pull her across, I stand and name the cost her silence made me pay. I say it without venom, with an aching clarity, you chose the cowardice of ease over the difficulty of truth, and I lived its cost. Lucas tries one last desperate gambit, he puts the blame on the confusion of youth, on the shame of scandal. We were protecting you, he says, repeating the old line. But the mirror has been turned, their protection looks different when you stand inside its consequences. The children watch, the adults flail. There is no applause, no heroism. There is only the hard, necessary unmaking of false narratives. What makes the climax a rupture and a release is not the drama of accusation but the moment I reclaim ritual. I lift the apple pie to the center of the table and place it where it should have been. The crust, imperfect, human, catches the chandelier light. I tell them quietly that I made it because I wanted to, because work and care and handcraft are how I map my worth. I set the microphone down and sing a single line from the lullaby my foster mother used, no embellishment, just a plain, true note. There is a stillness that is not shame but recognition. Some faces weep, others are stony, unyielding. A few hands, tentative, clumsy, reach for a plate. The act of serving the pie becomes the climax's symbol, not a demand for remuneration but a claim of presence. I have the right to this small domestic dignity. I do not wait for validation, I take my place. As I sit, the room's atmosphere has changed. The house is not healed, and promises will have to be earned, but the power balance has shifted. For the first time I am not standing at the margin asking to be seen. I am the one who has arranged the light. The climax is not a final victory so much as a clear pivot. The protagonist is no longer a guest in her own life. She has spoken, insisted, and begun to dictate the terms of what comes next. After the storm of revelation, the mansion settles into a tentative, brittle quiet. People drift away in clusters, sentences unfinished, politeness reconditioned to accommodate new facts. Lucas does not return that night. Some doors have a hinge that won't swing back the same way, and his is one of them. I step into the cold and the snow waits like a landing. It is a soft kind of exile, the white making clean the complicated dark we left inside. I stand on the front path, the city lights distant, holding the faded photograph like a talisman that is also a compass. The image, two young faces leaning into the brunt joy of an infant, feels like both proof and question. It is not a cure, it is fuel. The days that follow are slow and precise, a map of boundaries I begin to redraw. Calls come and go, hesitant apologies, the awkward stretch of people trying on regret. My mother's voice leaves messages that tremble with the effort of learning the language of remorse. My father's emails are shorter, formal, as if he's practicing being small in a way that is unfamiliar to him. Lucas texts a clumsy note that reads like a man testing his own sincerity. I do not reply immediately. Rebuilding trust is not a courtesy you grant lightly. It is a sovereign decision. Letters arrive, some brought by the chef, who becomes an unlikely anchor in my life. He shows up at my small apartment with food, with information, with a clarity that steadies me. They loved you, he says once, not as absolution but as a complicated admission. They were afraid. I accept the food, and later I accept the letters. In a shoebox I find envelopes unsent, drafts of claims that died in the stationery drawer. They are tender and terrible to read. They do not erase my childhood. They are, at best, a beginning. There are small, luminous moments that reassure me. The little cousins write notes, awkward and earnest, that do not pretend to understand everything but show curiosity. A 10-year-old who once watched me as if I were part of a museum collection now asks me to teach her to make pie. At that offer I discover a tenderness that feels like inheritance. It is not the sudden, neat resolution of filmic finales, it is the first clean stitch toward something plausible. Lucas comes eventually. He stands in my doorway without his usual mask, humility rough and unpracticed. He says he's sorry, and this time the words are not performative. He lists what he is ashamed of, small details that prove he is really seeing. He asks for nothing in exchange, merely to be heard. I listen and tell him that forgiveness is a process, not a transaction. I don't owe you absolution, I tell him. I owe myself peace. We do not fix everything that afternoon. Some conversations are the beginnings of repair, others close on the hinge of distrust. But the fact that we can sit in the same room without spectacle is an offering. He helps me carry boxes to my car later. The awkwardness between us is honest and therefore less lethal. In public, we are two people negotiating the shape of a future neither of us fully understands. In the quiet that follows, I write. I write letters I am not sure I will send. I write notes to myself that begin, "You are not a secret." I fold the photograph back into the shoebox and put it on a shelf I can see from the kitchen table. It is not a tombstone nor a trophy, just evidence of a life that happened and a life I still get to build. Months pass without magic. The family learns a lesson in degrees, some embrace me with trembling sincerity, some continue old inclinations of distance. I choose my closeness carefully, and often. One snowy evening, the chef knocks at my door with a wrapped slice of pie. "For company," he says. We sit, and because we are both people who know the work of quiet courage, we eat in companionable silence. Outside, the city is bright and ordinary. Inside, the warm breath of the small apartment smells like cinnamon and small, earned peace. The last line of my new ledger is not a flourish but a promise. I will tell my story in the way I choose. I will not be someone else's secret again. The microphone had been an instrument of revelation, but the pie, the photograph, and the letters became quieter keys. I place the empty pie plate on the windowsill and look out. Snow still falls, miraculous and indifferent. My footprints head forward. I am not healed. I am not whole. But I am seen, and that is the first radical shape of freedom. The story does not end with perfect reunions or cinematic forgiveness. It ends with the protagonist stepping into daylight to begin the hard work of naming herself on her own terms. The house behind me grows smaller as I walk away, and with each step I answer to the only voice that counts, mine.